Welcome to my video on graphing given the equation y equals x plus b. So previously in this unit, we learned the equation y equals mx and that went through the origin. Now y equals x plus b is going to go through a different spot, and we're going to learn that today. So the equation of a line can be written in many different ways. The equation y equals x plus b represents an additive relationship, as we talked yesterday. Two quantities x and y have an additive relationship when a constant value b exists, where y equals x plus b, and b can't equal 0, because if b was 0, then it would go through the origin. An additive relationship is not proportional, and its graph does not pass through the origin. In other words, it doesn't go through the point 0, 0. Note that b can be a positive value or a negative value. When b is negative, the right side of the equation could be written using a subtraction symbol. Example, if b is negative 5, then the equation y equals x minus 5 could be used. The slope of y equals x plus b is always 1. Because if there's no number in front of the x, we know there's a 1 in disguise, so the slope will always be 1. Now, remember, we've been talking about what this b is, and I didn't remind you that the b, let's circle it here, is actually called the y-intercept. So this is where it crosses the y-axis. So when it's in this form, y equals x plus b, then that ending is the y-intercept. So here's our steps to graphing in y equals x plus b. We have to first graph the coordinate at the y-intercept. So we're not starting at the origin, we're starting at the y-intercept because there's an ending. The slope will always be 1 in this form. So write a 1 in front of the x and turn it into a fraction. So the fraction would be 1 over 1. Graph the slope starting at the y-intercept. Be sure to graph in both directions from, you guessed it, the y-intercept. So notice I'm emphasizing where we're starting, the y-intercept. Remember that dividing two negatives always makes a positive. So remember, when we go down and left, that's two negatives, and it still makes a positive slope because two negatives makes a positive. Okay, so let's look at our first example. It says graph y equals x plus 3. So it's in the form y equals x plus b, so we're going to graph the y-intercept. So look at it, and the y-intercept is right here, so let's circle that, and let's label it the y-intercept so that when we look back at these, we know what that is. Now we're going to start, it says plus 3, so we're going to start at positive 3 right here, and we're going to put a dot right on the y-axis at positive 3. Now, the slope, I don't see a number in front of the x, so I'm going to put a 1. And now I'm going to write the slope as a fraction. So we're going to put a 1 underneath it, because remember, a 1 underneath it doesn't change its value, but it gives us a run. So we have rise over run. So that means we're going to rise 1, run 1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And now we can continue the pattern in the other direction. And remember, we're making a line. So we're going to go down 1 over 1. And remember, 2 negatives makes a positive. Down -1 over -1. Down -1 over -1. Down -1 over -1. Down -1 over -1. And down -1 over -1. Now use your ruler to help you make a straight line. And if you need to get a ruler, go ahead and pause the video and get one. And make sure you put arrows at the ends to make sure it represents a line, and circle the y-intercept. Now look, it crosses through 3, and look what the ending is, +3. Okay, let's look at example B. So we need to graph a coordinate at the y-intercept, so we need to know where the y-intercept is, so I'm going to circle this. And it says -1. Well, I know that -1 is not a positive 1, so I can't start at +1. I got to start at -1. Because remember, this is the same as adding -1. So that means the y-intercept is -1. So we're going to start here. And the slope, there's no number in front of the x, so the slope is 1. So we're going to write the slope is 1 over 1. And we're going to write rise over run. So we're going to rise 1, run 1 from -1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up +1 over +1, up +1 over +1, up +1 over +1, and up +1 over +1. Now I can go in the other direction. So down -1 over -1, and remember 2 negatives makes a positive. Down -1 over -1, down -1 over -1, down -1 over -1, down -1 over -1. And you could go down -1 over -1. You can do one more, but my screen doesn't allow me to do that. So I'm just going to make my line now and connect the points. Make sure there's arrows on both ends to show that it's a line. And once again, circle y-intercept. It does in fact cross a -1, and look what the ending is, -1. Okay, turn to the back, and let's look at 2 more examples. So we have graph y equals x minus 6. So once again, we're going to circle the ending here, and that is the y-intercept. And since it's -6, and adding -6 is the same as subtracting 6, we're going to start at -6. So right here on the y-axis. And there is no number in front of the x, so we know it has a slope of 1. So we're going to write the slope as 1. What can I put underneath it? Good, a 1. And we're going to write rise over run. Okay, so start at -6, and we're going to go up +1 over +1, up +1 over +1, up 1, +1 over +1, up +1 over +1, up +1 over +1, and up +1 over +1. And then, of course, we can go back to the y-intercept and go down -1 over -1, and down -1 over -1. So take your ruler and connect the points, and make sure you go a little bit past the last dot in both directions. Oops. Okay, and once again, we're going to circle where it crosses the y-axis. So the y-intercept is -6, and look what it ends with, -6. Okay, and our last and final example, graph y equals x plus 6. Okay, so I have an ending here, so we're going to circle the +6. That is the y-intercept, and it's +6, so I know I'm going to start at +6. right here. And there's no number in front of the x, so I'm going to put in a 1. So the slope is 1. What can I put underneath? A 1. So then now I have a run, and we're going to write rise over run. And we're going to go up 1 over 1 from the point positive 6. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down over 1, down and over, down -1 and over -1, and down -1 over -1. Now we're going to connect those points and put arrows on both ends. And notice it crossed at 6, so circle that. That represents the y-intercept, and look what the ending is, +6. So remember, when we're graphing in y equals x plus b, remember to start at the y-intercept. And when we're in the form y equals x plus b, the slope is always 1. Eventually, you'll learn an equation called y equals mx plus b, where there will be a slope other than 1. But for 7th grade this year, we are just doing y equals x plus b. That concludes our notes on graphing given the equation y equals x plus b. I hope you have a great day.